The Crow has been getting annihilated by critics as the reviews are brutal. If you were thinking about watching the Crow movie, maybe think again. It's been called unfathomably awful, repulsive and abysmal. Finally, they made a movie for goth incompetence, weighed down by too much muck, and was called an unfathomably inept Joker ripoff. Egregiously try-hard attempt to just copy everything about the Joker. So in a time where they turned the title character into nothing more than a punching bag, it's probably no surprise to you that it ended up getting just 21% from the critics on Rotten Tomatoes and 56% from audiences. And I know nothing about The Crow, I hadn't seen the original, so the first time I saw a clip of this movie, I was very surprised by how the action played out. I didn't know he was basically immortal, but the moment you see that in the movie, well, now this fight means nothing. There's no risk here, there's no stakes, he's not in any danger. He's not going to be stopped from getting to his end goal because he's immortal and they're not. He will inevitably win. And while yes, it's been done before with things like Wolverine, at least they tried to not get shot because it hurt them. Whereas in this, he's just getting mag-dumped to the face. That alone, combined with the trailer, was enough to make me decide I really don't need to see this movie. I'm gonna sit back, relax, and laugh at the critics' reviews.
I'm gonna kill them. Every single one of them.
And that seems for the best when people are saying it's got uneven pacing and extended lulls. Which means alongside the action scene that I wasn't impressed with, there would also have been huge periods of boredom that I would have had to suffer through as well. And let's face it, with Rings of Power Season 2 coming out in just 5 days, nobody needs more of that on their plate.
She's an elf disgrace.
We can rest, relax, the calm before the storm. Nobody needs a load of caca, let alone when they start describing how there was an attempt to make the film more feminist friendly. But if this was truly a femme interpretation, why not make Shally the one who gets resurrected by the crow spirit instead of Eric? Or as they otherwise phrased it, the wrong crow died.
Hilarious.
I think that alone goes to show that no matter how bad a film can be, Looper's always there to tell you it can get worse. If you follow their advice, you'll find a way. That it's especially hard when they go, no edgy teenager is going to think this movie is cool. Well, in their full review, they're talking how it should be made femme-friendly. That's just what those edgy teenagers want. It drags through a slow love story. It should have stayed dead. Only has one satisfying action sequence. It's like an anti-entertainment protest. Is that like antimatter? If antimatter and matter ever exist, it just explodes. It's like if you ever take a good movie and stick it in Hollywood, you'll annihilate California. The core audience is 13-year-old girls who shop at Hot Topic with skinny SoundCloud rapper boyfriends. At least the Twilight fans are finally getting entertainment made for them.
You shall not pass.
Sometimes, something so bad happens that a terrible sadness is carried with it and the soul can't rest. The Crow is one such bad something. Exceeds expectations, but never quite soars. 2.5 out of 5. Bro, how low were your expectations if 2.5 out of 5 was higher than you expected? It's like, well, the film was ass. But at least the staff didn't assault me. That was a bonus. Ugly, incoherent, and ultimately cynical. Sometimes, dead is better. Joy Division is the most exciting thing that happens in the movie. It's not a waste of talent or resources. It's worse. It just hangs there on the screen like an undead. A genuinely perplexing film. How did Hollywood struggle for decades to reboot this and end up with something so lackluster? He's genuinely confused how something this bad can exist. Elevator pitch of John Wick goes goth. It's a truly ugly thing to endure. Although I do like Pablo's, it's quite weak. But what is The Crow about? Well, it's a kind of dreary, pedestrian, and ho-hum retelling of Obar's story. A back-from-the-dead Avenger who paints black around his eyes for a sleigh date with a crow-powdered destiny. Broken glum Eric, a loner, still depressed about the death of his childhood horse. No, seriously. This is a guy who watched The Never-Ending Story and never recovered. He meets the love of his life in a rehab institution, but she appeals to his angsty sensitivity and breaks through the tattooed shell. And Eric, smitten and protective, returns the favor by breaking them out. Now, one of the issues in a story like this is the main characters have to be likable. If I don't like them, why would I care about their romance, let alone when they die? You start breaking out of rehab, I already don't care. It's like some insufferable audition for Euphoria without the benefit of Sydney Sweeney. But they both get killed, and Eric gets informed that he can save her from hell if he goes back and takes vengeance. Big plus for our boy, he can't be killed. Big minus for us, there's absolutely zero stakes, and it'll take more than an hour before any retaliation even begins. Despite the high body count, consider this a murder of crows. There are different types of bad movies, those which are ridiculed and funny, those which are just too boring to ever be thought of again, and there are those which are made with such staggering incompetence that they barely even exist. The latter is the category I find hardest to endure. The Crow would be such a misfire, genuinely startled about how utterly wretched the finished product is, and how unfit it would be for a wide release.
You're gonna love it. In fact, I think you're gonna see it twice.
The film has turned from heightened crime noir into a bad CW plot. I do love how CW has just become a generic insult for everything awful. What's that? You're talking about feelings in hallway? Yeah, it's CW, innit? The director has gone from bad to worse to off a cliff. One can sense the hellish late nights in the editing suite and imagine the fiery disagreements in the boardroom. A miserable scramble to salvage something, anything, from nothing, and they shouldn't have bothered. I have a long history of enjoying really awful critics reviews. Ever since I read one in the newspaper that described a movie as so boring he wanted to eat his own foot. That review is where I got the title for my Madame Web review. At the time, easily worst movie of the year. Since that time, it was then beaten by Borderlands. And it sounds like that's just got beaten again.
You've got one or two witnesses today. Not with us.
The Crow is repulsive and abysmal. The Crow's plot has been changed for the worse, and the WTF. This villain may look like your average wealthy and powerful white man who treats everyone like pawns in his twisted games, but also, he's an actual demon. Which, let's face it, is just how Hollywood sees all of the people matching that description. Are you this? Well, you must be evil. The self-proclaimed degenerates wander into the swanky apartment of an unknown friend, allowing for a fashion show in designer clothes and lovemaking on silk sheets. Because that's what everybody wants to see in their entertainment movies. Emo degenerates.
What do you call people you go out with but you don't try to sleep with?
Men.
The love story, which takes up the first 40 minutes, is a tedious trudge to its inevitable tragedy. They try and pretend it's a grand romance of soulmates, but it actually gives us a burnt-out detention boyfriend, rebellious cheerleader girlfriend dynamic. I love that to them that's just a normal description of a couple. Oh, I see him all the time, you see. That doesn't feel like it would even last a long weekend. Eric is pretty inept in undead vengeance. He's not much of a fighter. It throws Joker, John Wick, and Constantine into a laundry machine and hopes that faded shades of black eyeliner remain. If you made a John Wick Constantine movie, I would love that. I don't think that's this movie. In this revamp, he's been dug up to put on a Halloween costume. I think they liked it.
I love movies. I love making them. And I am a fan of movies.
Skarsgard can carry the movie, but this is the bad part. There isn't much of a movie to carry. It's bare bones basics. The Lovers on the Run story takes precedence over anything remotely mythic or supernatural. You can see why this is a good idea in theory, but it devolves into a faux erotic perfume commercial and outtakes from a failed YA series. Couldn't feel more sluggish. We know danger is headed their way when a guy does evil ASMR that causes people to become either stabby or self-destructive. Not even mutating into Death Wish in pancake makeup can salvage what feels like a flailing attempt to reintroduce a cult character. It doesn't take long to realize that what was meant to be a franchise starter is, unlike its hero, permanently dead on arrival. When he meets Shelley, they fall in love because, well, the plot demands it and they both have tattoos. Don't you just love it when romances are about a deep inner connection with people? We have tattoos? That look like me, you do. That's what Matt's amazing. We're both lunatics and got tattoos. Giving us half an hour of very sad people being very sad, talking about how broken and hard to love they are, doesn't add anything to this. The prelude sequences, despite being hollow, aren't even the true problem. Despite working hard to generate sparks between the leads, they never materialize. So the first third of the film is a futile and action-free slog. A dour purgatory that resembles a dilapidated train station. The Crow isn't simply lethargic, it's also ludicrous as well.
This is bad. This is really bad.
Clunky plot points, shoggy computer-generated special effects, Skarsgard's silly, artistic tattoos, and a fake smile that is so doggedly Joker-esque, it's borderline embarrassing. Ultimately, he's powerless to offset the shop-worn aesthetics and second-rate posturing of this do-over, whose sole saving grace, climax be damned, is being inept enough to thwart any real possibility of future sequels.
Do you get it? Do you get it?
This thing is so awful, the only thing it achieved is it's definitely killed the entire series. And at least that and Acolyte mean they've got a lot in common. Congratulations, you're in good company. Now, The Crow seems to have tried a very modern tactic to get people into the cinema. And you read that with here, the actor is often shirtless, gobsmackingly muscled, mulleted, top to toe tattooed, and it's sexy. Even if his character is a walking void, a colour-killed soul, often just deadly on screen and failing to make us care to be along for the ride. They're like, oh my god, I love everything about the main character.
Juicy.
Is not a waste of talent or resources. No, he just hangs there on the screen, as undead as Eric himself. One thing this movie had going for it was, well, thirst, basically. Everything else the reviews claimed were awful. The special effects, the fights, the stakes, because he keeps coming back alive. The fight scenes themselves, of which there were so very few. The first 40 minutes of romance where nobody cared about the romance at all because it was all so very shallow, and the people involved are self-proclaimed degenerates, and so nobody can care about them because nobody relates to them because they're normal people. This is a movie that basically summarizes, hello fellow kids. It's trying to be edgy and dark rather than just focusing on the basics of a story. Good versus evil. Especially in modern times in Hollywood, at least focus on trying to make something good before you try and make something edgy. Because the only thing you've achieved in this is you've made a normal Hollywood movie, meaning that it's crap, and then also failed at making it edgy. You could have focused on demons and fights and come out with a Constantine movie and appealed to the blokes. Or you could have gone down the dark, failed romance idea and, you know, appealed to about 10 different women. Instead, it seems like they tried to merge it into both things and just pissed off everybody. So the blokes are sitting there going, God, this romance is boring, isn't it? I wish we could just get down to the demonic fighting. And they're like, well, the main character, he is hot, but they also killed his girlfriend. And how am I supposed to project myself into the movie when there's no character for me to live vicariously through? You ended up annoying everybody. And so with that, I can understand why everybody hated it. Coming in at just 21% out of 78 reviews. Or as I refresh, 20% out of 80. And with just 500 plus reviews from the all audience, doesn't look like it's doing very good at the box office either. This movie had a $50 million budget and The Crow collapses. Made $650,000 on its preview opening day and is projected to come in at number 7 with an estimated $4.5 million to $5 million on its opening weekend. Won't even crack the top 5. If your first weekend is making less than a tenth of your budget, and that's even without the cinema's cut or the marketing being taken into account, then The Crow has failed in every way possible, from box office to critics to audience reaction. And while some people may have said that the first is a cult classic, the remake most certainly won't be. But those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know down in the comments below. Like the video if you like the video, subscribe more videos like this in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.